All right, hi there, guys. Jay Terry here. So, here in Connecticut today, we had a hearing today in Connecticut. Not sure how many of you guys are aware of this, but the Connecticut Freedom Alliance is suing the Department of Education, the state of Connecticut, basically, in a lawsuit to stop the mandates of masking children in school all day. So today, they had the state moved to dismiss the lawsuit, and Connecticut Freedom Alliance moved to file an emergency a temporary injunction. So what that basically means is that if Connecticut Freedom Alliance wins their motion, then masking of children in school would temporarily stop immediately. They call it like a TRO, so it's a temporary restraining order. Now the state moved to dismiss, but the case that hasn't been dismissed yet. So it was really interesting day. So two experts were questioned today to verify whether they'll be experts. So it's really interesting. There was a psychiatrist and there was also a medical doctor. I think I can name who they are. We had a medical doctor, Jim Meehan, and the psychiatrist was Dr. Kaufman. And so both the defense, which is the state, and the plaintiff, which is Connecticut Freedom Alliance, on behalf of parents who brought up this lawsuit. I'm sorry, I keep saying today. It's still quite human. So on behalf of parents of school children who are being irreparably harmed by the masking of children. And it was interesting to hear the judge's questions and talking about, masking of children as a whole, and talking about, masking of children who might have exemptions or disabilities. And so the judge was, I thought, pretty fair, and opening this whole scope of legal conversation. So basically the gist of it is they were going back and forth about whether or not, okay, so the state's argument here, and I got notes so I'm not all over the place because it's like so really deeply involved and there's a lot of legal talking. So I have some notes here. So basically the state moved to dismiss the case, saying that there was no case, that the reason being why Connecticut Freedom Alliance has no case, according to the state of Connecticut, is that there are exemptions if you can't wear a mask, and that the governor has a right to institute these executive powers based on, Connecticut law, and during an emergency. They use a specific code of law that they're using. So that was the state's argument, that there are exemptions. So if you really can't wear a mask, if it poses a problem for your health, you can get an exemption. Well, the Connecticut Freedom Alliance came back, and the lawyers for that is Dub Davinsky and Craig Fishbein, who are also both state representatives. So that's really kind of interesting. But they're state representatives, and they are the ones that are doing this lawsuit. They're two attorneys here in Connecticut. So basically what happens is they moved to dismiss the case, but the judge was hearing Connecticut Freedom Alliance. So far, it has not been dismissed. Two of the expert witnesses. Now, I'll have to ask Brian, or another legal expert, on this about what all that means and how it was proceeding today. But two experts were testifying today. They were Jim Meehan, MD, and Dr. Kloss, who is a psychiatrist. So Connecticut Freedom Alliance argument is not only are the masks hurting children psychologically, that there's profound psychological harm, panic attacks, PTSD, but that there's also medical problems, including like asthma and difficulty breathing and low oxygen levels and all that stuff. So they had the two experts from both sides, a medical doctor and a psychiatrist. And so both the defense and the plaintiff were questioning the witnesses, the expert witnesses. So what that means is the judge hasn't decided whether these witnesses, will be accepted as expert witnesses. The state was trying to argue that the expert witnesses are not experts and they can't use them, and all that good stuff. They were going back and forth. It was really quite interesting. And so far what came out of this is there was a lot of discussion on Addendum 11. I'm going to pull up some slides here for you. So the state's argument is that they can have this mask executive order the executive order through the state that they can have it because there's exemption. That's the state's argument, that if there's a problem with the mask, there's plenty of exemptions, and that these are guidelines. So the state kept saying these are guidelines and recommendations, which I thought were so interesting, because if they're just guidelines and recommendations, then how come a child without a mask could be barred from school? But that was one of the state's big arguments. These are recommendations, these are guidelines, and the governor, Lamont in Connecticut, is within his right to institute these measures and their guidelines. So it was really interesting. So the lawyer for the state, his name was Cunningham. I don't have his first name, and somebody just asked the judge name. I have him as Judge M. Sorry for that. It was abbreviated on the court feed that I was watching today, but I will find out the judge's name is Judge M. So sorry they don't have his full name. It was hard to see it when I was in. It was really interesting to observe a court hearing through the internet, which it was really kind of strange because every once in a while somebody's microphone would click off and you would hear kind of some strangeness. But I think everybody did a really great job in making that happen, bringing this court hearing to the public in this manner and doing it this way. It was really quite interesting. So I'm appreciative for the technology that allowed for this to happen, that it was able to happen, that we were able to bear witness to this very important court hearing today that is reconvening till tomorrow at 2. And I'll come back on with another report about that. So they questioned 2 experts, a medical doctor and a psychiatrist. And so one of the medical doctor, I'm going to quote him here, he said, the science, this was his testimony, the science is overwhelmingly against the masks. And we don't know if this expert is going to be accepted, if the judge is going to accept it. The state is trying to argue that the witness is not qualified, so they're trying to get these experts thrown out. The state wanted to get the whole case thrown out. So the state tried to dismiss this today. And as it looks at right now, the case has not been dismissed. It's reconvening till tomorrow at 2 p.m. Everything is still up in the air. There's no decision that's been made. Nothing's been set in stone, just that 2 expert witnesses were testifying, not on the science per se. There was a little bit of that, obviously, because they had to talk about science because they're 2 experts in the science. So they got into a little bit of that in their qualifications. And like I said, so the state is trying to motion to get rid of those experts. They're not qualified. And so the both attorneys on each side, the plaintiff and the defendant, both have to come up with a brief that they're going to give to the judge, citing cases and things and precedents of why should we keep these witnesses, or why should these witnesses be thrown out and irrelevant, or, just, there was a word that they used for it, an ideologue, or something to that effect, or if there's a bias and they're not really an expert, if the state gets their ability to throw out these experts. There's more experts. There's definitely lots of experts out there, but I really hope that these 2 experts stick and that the state of Connecticut can continue to retain those experts because they truly are experts in their field. Quite interesting stuff. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow and as they testify more and the scope and what is being discussed, which is quite amazing for any medical freedom fighters out there who've been in this fight for so long to hear all this really deep science being discussed. And it was just at the surface, because they were just trying to determine whether these 2 experts are going to be able to be part of the testimony, part of the evidence. So that it reconvenes tomorrow and they're bringing up cases. One of the cases that was cited and giving precedence or the reasons why this is okay was a case that was, it's called Jacobson. And this happened in Massachusetts over vaccination, where this case, Jacobson, against the state of Massachusetts, it was ruled that, this is an interesting thing about this case, and I've talked to lawyers about this. So the ruling was that the Jacobson had to pay a $5 fine for not being vaccinated. But he wasn't forced to be vaccinated. Nothing was taken from him. He had to pay this $5 fine. That was in 1905. So $5 in 1905. I'm not sure what the equivalent of that would be financially. So he had to pay. So all the time now, this case is brought up all the time that the government has a right to mandate any type of health procedure or protocol to the public based on this case. So I really think it's important that we have a new case that has another argument brought up to the courts, because they always refer back to this. And what's scary about that is that the state feels it has justification to require mandates of masking, mandates of vaccines. As we're seeing all across the country, there are flu vaccine mandates coming up. New York is wanting to have one. New Jersey just beat it down. God bless Jersey. Jersey strong. So congratulations to New Jersey. It was not going to be happening. I'm pretty sure that's what I was reading earlier today. There's a very slight chance that I could be wrong on that, but as far as my understanding is that they closed the session down and are not going to be hearing that right now. Doesn't mean that Jersey's totally out of the water, but New Jersey was trying to enact during this time a mandatory flu shot, and the citizens gathered and they were able to stop that process from happening. So congratulations to New Jersey on that. But all across the country, Massachusetts governor did pass a mandate for mandatory vaccines, and they always go back to the Jacobson case. They always go back to the fact that the state was able to get Jacobson to pay a fine for refusing a vaccine. And like I said, lawyers who look at this and interpret this case are saying, that he was able to still exercise his right. He got charged with a fine. He didn't have to get a vaccine. Services weren't withheld from him. He just paid the fine and went about his business. So it's a really interesting case because of the way it's used today in modern time, and with how invasive some of these medical procedures are. And obviously back then vaccines were an invasive medical procedure, as they still are today. There's way more vaccines on the market. There's way more diseases and viruses that they're trying to mandate. And so it's a really interesting, as we go through this process in the COVID era, as we find ourselves here, and how this case, the Connecticut Freedom Alliance case, is about school children being masked all day long. It's not, people will argue that, going into the store for 5 minutes or this or that, but children are required to wear these masks all day long. And so Connecticut Freedom Alliance is arguing that not only is it detrimental to the psychological well-being and health of these children, it's detrimental to the physical health of the children in public schools in Connecticut, in schools in Connecticut, because this goes through all the schools, even private schools, which the state was trying to weasel its way out of that, because there is a plaintiff, I guess, that has a child in a parochial school. But this is across the board, though. It doesn't even matter. Private, public, it's all coming down through the state. So it is fascinating to see the state trying to wiggle out of this and really using the fact that these are guidelines. So the state is saying the mask policy are guidelines, and there are exemptions and means for people to opt their children out of the mask mandate to be in public school. And so the Connecticut Freedom Alliance legal team was arguing that there are very stringent rules in place that do not allow for people to seek exemptions, and that there have been families who have sought out medical exemptions, have gotten medical exemptions, and still the school is refusing to allow those children in school. And so the state is arguing that no, they have a right to get an exemption. The governor is within his power to require this, and anyone can get an exemption. And these are just guidelines, okay? You can't make this up. So it's just guidelines. So I have a few slides that I put together for you guys, and we're going to take a look at this because this came up quite a bit. So they call it like the AAA, which is like, it's like how they're going to achieve their goals. And it's this education guideline. And you know what? I'm going to put a link in there in the comments. Let me see if I can do that for you guys right now. It might pop back in at me, but I have the link here. So you guys can go and check this out for yourselves. This is really fascinating information that I think all parents of public school children everywhere should really have a full understanding of what's going on. So let me just copy this and see if I can put this right in for you guys right now into the comments. So bear with me if it might bleep back at me as I try to do this live in real time. So this is the addendum. Now there's a whole like booklet, and bear with me, it's like the AAA. It's like achievement advancement or something like that. It's like learning all together in the COVID era or something like that. It's a booklet that's given out to all the school districts, which you guys should totally read. And you can find that in Executive Order number 9, which I will also post that in the comments for you as well, which will bring you to all this information. So Executive Order number 9 is the order that they're arguing about. And this pertains to the school mask mandates and our children here in the state of Connecticut and what they have to go through to go to school. That's Executive Order number 9. You can go and look that up too while I'm talking about this. But here, this is the addendum to this. And bear with me if this starts talking back to me. I don't mean that to happen. I'm doing this live in real time. So let me get this. It's, here, I'm going to put this through. You're probably hearing me talk. It's pretty confusing. All right, so I just posted that. That's the addendum. So you can take a look at that. And let's see here. Let's pull up the first slide here. So this is basically, this is coming out of the recommendations. That's coming out of Executive Order 9. Executive Order 9. This is coming out of the educational requirements. And I just wanted to show you some of the things that they're using as this guideline. So as you can see, they got the face covering, the face shield, and the plastic barrier. So this is just really just amazing to me. So basically, the way it goes is that they have the face shield, but the face shield, so in Connecticut, the way it works is they'll have the face shield, but you still have to wear a mask. I don't really understand what the face shield is all about. So they'll have the face shield, but you still have to wear a mask. And they were talking about children with disabilities, like children who are deaf and they need to read lips, that they could potentially use this face shield, but they can't use the face shield, just the face shield. They have to use the mask, but if they had to, they could have the child not have the mask on and a plastic partition around the child. God. So the reason for the face shield is to protect the eyes and the eyes and a nose without a mask, but you have to wear a mask anyway, so it makes zero sense. So I'm going to also put in here the Executive Order 9, where you can see that also for yourself, or you can follow this as well. So here, I'm going to put that right in here for you guys. This is Executive Order number 9, where you can go see the educational guidelines and the total, it's just like, it's amazing to me, the Orwellian language here. Let me just read to you exactly what it says in here, because I got to say this. Okay, so here's what the AAA stands for. Adapt, Advance, Achieve. So adapt, advance, achieve, Connecticut's plan to learn and grow together. Adapt, advance, achieve. Oh God, the AAA, right? So you guys got to check this out. You really do. You got kids in public school, kids in any school in Connecticut, daycare, whatever. You need to read this document. I posted it in there. So you're going to get a link that will give you, you'll have to go and do a little bit more research. I should have saved that link for you, but I did not put that link. I'm not going to open that back up. So you'll just have to go and cut and paste and put that into your browser and go find the booklet that the state of Connecticut, your public school, is using as a guideline for your child to go to school in these conditions. I suggest everyone read it. Read it. I just started really tearing into this today after the hearing, and I was really focused on what they were talking about with the masks, but there's a lot in this, and all parents should read these guidelines that the state of Connecticut is giving to the schools. And how interestingly that the state's argument is that they are guidelines. So if they're guidelines, if you're not comfortable with a mask, it shouldn't even matter if it's medical or psychological. You're not comfortable masking your child up and you don't want to follow those guidelines. So the language isn't honest, because a guideline is not a law. And an executive order is not a law. Let's just be clear on that. Executive orders are not laws. That's why they continuously say guidelines. And they utilize the law by saying that the governor is able to do this. Let me just get you the exact thing that the governor is able. What do they call it? 28-9, I believe it's under that he gets the ability to execute these. I had taken some notes. Let me just see if I have that in here. It's not that important, but just So so they're basically, the state's arguing that the governor is within his rights to do this based on 789 dash whatever the legal code is that's in our emergency preparedness act, that he is able to do this. And another interesting argument is that they brought up is that the Attorney General Tong didn't put like an official anything out. He did make a press release after the lawsuit was filed, but he hadn't given his opinion on what the governor was doing specifically for this. He's given his opinion on what the governor is doing for COVID, saying he's totally all within the Constitution. The Constitution grants broad powers to the governor in times of an emergency. So, and the governor himself, when questioned, will say that the legislature is the one that's endowing him with these powers, where he is able to do this, what they're saying legally. Okay, it's very interesting, but it's just guidelines. Are you confused yet? Because my head is spinning on all this. So let's take another look at this slide. So this is the addendum. This is addendum 11, okay? So this particular thing that I'm going to show you, this is the addendum. How many addendums do they have that this is number 11? I mean, like, how many addendums do you have? If you have, like, so one of the things that you'll see when you go and you read the guidelines that the state issued to the schools is how they're opening up the school. You'll see like all of it saying, you know, this is fluid. This can change, you know, bear with us. We basically don't know what we're doing. So here, let's take a look at this. These are the general requirements. I hope this is big enough for you guys to read it, but I'll read this to you. So CSDE, Connecticut State Department of Education, further directed school districts to prepare to provide a face covering to any student or staff member who does not bring one of them to school on any given day, or be prepared to deny entry to the individuals who arrive at school without a face covering. Does that sound like that's a guideline, that there's a way to not have to do that? It certainly doesn't to me. And of course, that's not Connecticut Freedom Alliance's case. I'm just saying in general, if the state's arguing these are just guidelines, how is a guideline denying you entry into a school building? That seems like to me that the governor is, you know, kind of, you know, and this was also an argument on the plaintiff's side, that the governor is making up these rules. He's acting like the legislature. We have 3 branches of government for a reason. So the governor is operating as the legislature. The defense, which is the state of Connecticut, is saying the governor is able to do that. He's within the law because he has those powers, and that's just the way it is. So that's the state's argument. So here's what that was saying. And then let's take a look at this. So now this is about the exemptions from mask wearing. The need for a medical exemption for the wearing of face coverings of the styles recommended for use in schools for source control is rare. Medical contraindications to the wearing of cloth or other similar loose-fitting masks are generally limited to individuals suffering from severe chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, such as might be seen with cystic fibrosis, severe emphysema, heart failure, or significant facial burns that would cause extreme pain or interference with the healing of the skin. So I'm going to read a little more than what I've highlighted because I really want you guys to hear this part. And hopefully you could see this. You could read along with me. The link I did put in the comments so you could go read this whole document yourself. These severe medical conditions will be rare in students or staff capable of presenting to the school or work or instruction. In most cases, these individuals would not be able to move about freely without significant assistance. In addition, for anyone suffering from any of these underlying conditions, the strong recommendation would be for that person to remain at home and engage in fully virtual learning due to their risk of developing severe complications if they did become infected with COVID-19. So, does that sound like there's an exemption to you? Does that sound to you that your child could still go to school without a mask if they have a medical exemption? First of all, their state is very stringent in that guideline right there, and you can read through it. It goes on. I have another slide. Let me pull up this one here. This is Aside from medical contraindications, let me just continue reading here for you guys. So aside from medical contraindications, there may be individuals or situations where exemptions to mask wearing should be considered. For example, those with developmental disabilities may not tolerate or be able to comply well with masks wearing in school, but this alone should not be a basis for their exclusion. Schools must assess on an individual basis the appropriate accommodations for students with disabilities who are vulnerable to wear a mask. In addition, students and staff involved with certain special education activities like speech therapy or lip reading is needed to be exempted from wearing a face mask intermittently. In these cases, the exception is required. So there's a little bit of wiggle room in the respect for lip reading, which gets into that strangeness of this that I was showing you guys earlier, where they have the face shield, which the children cannot just wear the face shield alone. This is a plastic face shield. It covers the forehead, extends below the chin, and wraps around the sides of the face. So, yeah, this is like, so back to Connecticut Freedom Alliance's argument is that it's very stringent, very limited exemptions, and the Connecticut Freedom Alliance is arguing that there are many things that could bother and aggravate a child's health and welfare, from the psychological aspect to the medical aspect. And that's where they had two experts, a medical doctor and a psychiatrist, to discuss both aspects, from the psychological to the physical medical. Which, honestly, if it's affecting your psyche, it's affecting your overall. I'm into the holistic vision of things, but that's how that's rolling. Here, I want to pull up another slide for you guys. So this is, this really struck me today, and I was really upset after reading this. So, as mentioned previously, the need for individual inside school building to wear a face covering mask for source control is likely to be a reality for the operation of school buildings for the foreseeable future. Masking of children in school for the foreseeable future. Do you guys see that? Yellow highlighting the foreseeable future. That means they're not going away, guys. It says it right there in their guidelines. They have no plans of pulling any of this stuff back. It's not there. They don't plan on it. The only way the masking of our children, the mass masking of our public society, the only way we're going to get rid of, and I want to be very clear on this, mandates. Because if you want to wear a mask, go. It's a free country. I'm always like, do what you need to do to make yourself feel comfortable, but don't expect others to follow suit or agree with you, because I don't agree with you. You're not wearing a mask for me. You're not wearing it for anyone but yourself. That's just the facts of the matter. So here we go. So here's what the school would like you to do. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Let parents and students know as soon as possible and unequivocally that the use of face coverings, masks that completely cover the nose and mouth, will be required when inside the school building. Get them used to the idea that this is the new reality of school during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the importance of universal mask use as a strategy to keep schools operating for in-person instruction. Parents can help kids find masks that they find comfortable and act as role models by always wearing masks when they are going out in public and reminding their children to do the same. Yes, that's your state of Connecticut. That is the Addendum 11. That's, we've heard this in the media. We've heard this from politicians alike too, mostly from the governor, saying this in the schools, saying this to get your children used to wearing masks by being a good citizen and following suit with this. Well, I don't agree with it. I know there's plenty of science just from the brief little bit of testimony that the experts were able to give. Let me just give you some highlights. The science is overwhelming against the masks. Through 200 studies he went over, the science is overwhelming against the use of masks for viruses. And this expert went over 200 different studies. What the science has always said is there's very little that we can do to stop viruses, to do anything about virus. It's that you ever take your child to the doctor when they're sick and they say a virus is going to run their course just to make your child comfortable? There's a reason for that, okay? That's just part of being a human on the earth, is that we're going to come across viruses. That's basic science. I know people will argue it's novel, it's new. Yeah, but it's still a virus, and we still have a human immune function, and we're still exposed to many things as we walk the planet Earth all the time. And I'm going to be doing more conversations on terrain versus germ theory, which is absolutely fascinating stuff. Is it the germ that makes you sick, or is it the terrain, your body, your state of health, that makes you sick, that makes you susceptible to sicknesses? Viruses are virons. They're like they're tiny. There's no cloth mask on the planet that's going to stop a virus. And if you read through the literature that they have, their guidelines, nowhere does it say that it stops a virus. Let's continue. Here, let me pull this back up. Okay, so teach, model, and reinforce the universal use of face coverings while inside the school building as part of your in-person training for students and staff as they return to school. This includes information about how to appropriately wear a mask, the need for laundering of certain mask types, frequent reminders to avoid touching their face covering, and to wash their hands and use their hand sanitizer frequently. Didn't the FDA just recently come out and say that their hand sanitizer is making people sick? You can't make this stuff up, guys. You just can't. So, yeah, let's continue on. Let's just finish the rest of this here. Set clear guidelines regarding when face coverings can be temporarily removed when other mitigants are in place, such as while eating, drinking, or when student staff are outside. Sufficient social distancing and other mitigation strategies should be strictly enforced during these times. Exceptions may be necessary for certain special education students and other specific populations. So, what happens to the virus when you're eating your food? What happens to the virus when you need a drink of water? Are kids supposed to wear a mask when they go into the bathroom? Wait a minute. So, if a kid's supposed to wear a mask when they're going into the bathroom, how does that work? How does wearing a mask to the toilet work? Just out of curiosity, a basic hygiene question here. You got to go use the toilet and you're going to have a mask on your face? Like, seriously? Like, come on now. The insanity of the whole situation makes me want to, like, just scream at the top of my lungs. Like, how, and they have this thing, you guys got to read this. You got to read this. It's like, you can't believe this is real. You almost feel like you're reading something out of a science fiction novel. Like maybe Stephen King. He's not science fiction, he's horror. Maybe Stephen King himself could have wrote this story. But it goes into talking about, so if you've ever worked with little children, and you know how it is with little children, and they're just, they got a whole host of needs, little kids, okay? From pre-K, kindergartners. Kindergartners are just kind of starting to be a little bit easier, but there's always somebody who wets their pants. There's, there's all kinds of situations, right? With little sweet little kids, they're babies, little kids, right? So they get the little kids, and so the teacher, to take the little kid to the bathroom, has to wear full PPE. It's not enough to just do what you've done in the past. Wash your hands, put the child's soiled clothes into a plastic bag, let mom and dad know that they had an accident. That happened to my daughter when she was 4 years old. She was so mortified, and the school called me, and they had different clothes on her, and nobody got sick. Nothing happened. Of course, this is all pre-COVID, but there were still germs and viruses then. I mean, my gosh, we have germs and viruses that kill people all the time, every day. Look at the flu. The flu killed 650,000 people worldwide last year. The flu kills every year. The flu is going to kill people who are susceptible, who have lowered immune system, the elderly, because they're old. They're older. They're more susceptible and closer to death, as we all will be if we are blessed to live into our elder years. But, we can't pretend that's not just a part of life. How do we stop all the regular life from happening? And how do we mask up our children all day long because of grandma? Meanwhile, poor grandma's in a nursing home by herself, locked away from family. And this is protocol in numerous states around the country. I'm going to be doing a whole video on that. Governor Lamont just kind of eased up some of the restrictions in nursing homes. And, from people that I've been hearing from, it's really pretty sad and pretty dark and pretty scary. That's not what this particular show is about. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but just kind of showing how the state is making up all these rules, all these regulations that they call guidelines, and doing this outside of our basic process. And that came up a lot too about the process. I just want to pull up my other notes here. So one of the things that was argued is the state had a motion to dismiss an exhaustion of remedies. I don't know what the legal term for that all means. I'll have Brian Festa, Connecticut Freedom Alliance, on live with me, and he'll get into more of the legal terminology and what that means. We'll make that happen. And so so this is the governor's powers are granted under 28-9 of Connecticut General Statute, if you want to go check that out for yourself. So there was argued that the governor is acting like the legislature and has that power under 28-9. That's the state's argument. If challenging the constitutionality, this is the state's argument too, that a recent case that was decided in Governor Lamont's favor, there was a case that a bar brought against Governor Lamont, and that judge ruled that Lamont could close down her business and he was within his means. So the state was trying to argue that because of that case, this mask lawsuit should also be thrown out. That didn't happen so far. The case is going on tomorrow at 2 p.m. And they argued again, like I said, there are exemptions in place. And so what the judge was really trying to determine for today, because Connecticut Freedom Alliance filed a motion, a temporary injunction, a TRO, a temporary restraining order, basically to stop the masking of our children, like immediately. So this could be decided, guys, in a couple of days, okay? Not for like the whole thing, but this would be a temporary restraining order. So if the judge rules in favor of the Connecticut Freedom Alliance, that would be a huge, wonderful victory. This is why the state is fighting really, really hard to stop this. Because if the judge rules in favor of that, then immediately parents wouldn't have to mask up their children. So, and children would be able to go to school without the use of these face masks. Now, how that would work if the judge did rule like that, of course, there'd probably be all this still fighting, but that would be really interesting and a great victory if that could happen. And I'm crossing my fingers, saying lots of prayers that actually happens, because, and here's what the Connecticut Freedom Alliance was also arguing. They want to so the judge would like to he wants to take the time to look at, what is the emergency? He's asking about the emergency, and that's, wants to look at that. And he was a really fair and reasonable judge. So there's a bunch of exhibits and expert witnesses, 2 expert witnesses that were questioned today. They'll be back again tomorrow, and that both sides have to give the judge briefings. So they're going to cite case law from previous cases on like why they should get rid of these expert witnesses. And then the plaintiff is going to, look at their stuff and say why we need to keep these expert witnesses. So it's all about, do we get to keep these expert witnesses to continue into seeing if we can have this emergency injunction on the masking of our children. And I think this couldn't come in a better time, honestly, because just September 21st, the daycares, 3-year-olds are now required to wear masks in daycare in the state of Connecticut. 3-year-old children. This is just really crazy. Let me see. The plaintiff argues that masks are ineffective to the spread of COVID, and they are dangerous for health and the psychological welfare of children. Expert Andrew Kaufman, and expert Dr. Meehan. I hope I said that correctly. And so they were just talking about governments. So the government put in a handful of exhibits. And this was, I thought, really interesting. So the hierarchy of studies, the term came out, the hierarchy of studies, and government has low-level studies that are anecdotal. That's what the plaintiff was arguing, and the judge was very interested in the government studies and wanting to really look at that in a way that is, what is that? Where did these studies come from? What is it? And I thought that was really inspiring for me to hear the judge really inquiring about that, putting special attention. So what the state is using as their exhibits is the CDC guidelines as evidence. So the state is using the CDC guidelines. What I find so absolutely fascinating about this is just that recently, and I had a slide of this, but I think I took it out at this point. Let me see if I could pull that up. I had a slide. It's just perfect if I could pull up this slide for you guys to show the hypocrisy of the whole thing. Let me see if I could pull up this slide here. So yeah, let me see. Do I have that one? Let's see if that's it. No. I'm always on the Hawaii thing. That's our lovely Josh Cabal. Let me see. Maybe I don't have that slide in there. Sorry, guys. I took that slide out. That was Josh Cabal in a testing slide. Another very important story to talk about. Semaphore, Thermal Scientific, Josh Cabal, Annie Lamont. Those are all stuff that's good to talk about, but that's not the topic I'm applying to today. It's about the masking over children and the lawsuit that Connecticut Freedom Alliance brought up for children against the Department of Education and the mask masking of our kids. So let me see let me pull this. This was the types of masks. Let me show you guys this. I thought this was really interesting here. So you probably can't really see that, but basically what that is saying is that there are two types of masks that they can't use, the N95s and the masks with the valves. And then they have question marks about bandanas and neck gaiters. You guys got to read this addendum. I fully recommend that you go to that link, you read the addendum, and really read the language of all this yourself. Because when you start to read it, it makes your head spin. I mean, it's incredible to me that this is the kind of things that our children are going through and that we're expected to do this to our kid. At the beginning of this addendum, it's universal source control or wearing face coverings, masks that completely cover the nose and mouth at all times by everyone, one in public, or any time a person is within 6 feet of someone not living in their household, has been the most important mitigation strategy implemented during the current COVID-19 pandemic. Wow. That's the state. That's your state of Connecticut. Really? So people will say, oh, you're so upset about a little cloth face covering over your face. Well, if you think that a little piece of cloth or paper over your face is going to stop a virus, I have no words for you. I can't believe that we're actually having this argument. Yes, I'm highly opinionated on it. Yes, I don't like the face masks. There's lots of science to back that up. I'm so excited for the experts that the Connecticut Freedom Alliance was able to get. I really hope that these experts can continue to testify and will be accepted, and this case moves forward. I hope that the judge issues a temporary restraining order on the masks. I hope that Connecticut Freedom Alliance wins. On that note, you can help Connecticut Freedom Alliance by making a donation to the Legal Defense Fund. They need the money. These lawyers are right now writing up their briefs. They have to give those briefs to the judge tomorrow. Court reconvenes at 2 p.m. I'm going to pull up Connecticut Freedom Alliance. Let me see. I'm sorry, guys. I want to get you guys a link to donate for them, and I should have had that all ready for you. So I'm going to just get you right to their, sorry, it's just not easy for me to do this live in real time. So the Connecticut Freedom Alliance is collecting donations for this lawsuit, and you can give them a donation and help them with the cause. This is a crowdsourced for the legal fees so you can help them out. And I'm just going to give you a basic link to their overall website, and you can go from there. There is actually, sorry about that, there is a specific GoFundMe page, and hopefully you can get to that through the website. Sorry about that. So that's in there. And I see, oh, somebody, yeah, I love David Icke. Thanks for sharing that. Connecticut keeps voting blue like damn fools. Yeah, you know something? It does seem to be that it's definitely more of a Democrat attitude. And I really like to think of myself as a purple person, right? But I got to tell you guys, right now we need to change the leadership in Connecticut. And the Democratic leadership in Connecticut stinks. They stink, stink, stink. And I'm not saying all Democrats stink. I'm definitely not saying that. I think you should judge each candidate individually, but all the candidates that have been in office right now who are, they're following the party line, they're following this very draconian type of leadership where they feel that they have the right to tell you how to live your life to keep you safe, even if you disagree with their protocol and you have science and you have hard facts to back it up. They just want to shut you up, tell you you're an anti-masker. The Democrats today posted on Twitter, and this was really upsetting, and I thought, totally, how do grown adults act like that? They're calling the lawsuit. This is on Twitter. I'm going to pull it right up so I could read it right to you. Actually, I'm going to go right in here. I'm going to take you guys to my Twitter. Hold on. This is my Facebook wall, but I'm going to take you guys right over to Twitter, and I'm going to show you this tweet that happened today, because this is unacceptable. I feel like, how can adults actually talk like this? It doesn't make sense to me. Bear with me here. My computer's running a little bit slow. How can adults actually talk like this? How is that even possible? Mind-blowing, in my opinion. Hold on a second. It's still taking us a little bit to load up. So this is what they tweeted out today. And, you know, I get that you're against the lawsuit, but when you start to use these ad hominem attacks and anybody who questions what's going on, how this is affecting them, that you say things that are, it's just unbelievable, the things that they could say. So hold on a second as I get right to here. I thought I had shared it, so let me see. Hold on a second, guys. Apologize for that. So here, hold on, it's a little slow. Just want to get over here. Okay. So yeah, they tweeted this anti-masker lawsuit. My internet is running really, really slow. I apologize for that. So bear with me. I'm going to pull it right up. It's coming, moving slow, moving kind of slow. Where are we here? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble finding it. Give me one more second and see if I can find it. I thought I had it right up there, but I did not. So I'm just gonna see. Here we go. Did they put it here? No, that's maybe they could have even potentially have taken it down. I think it was Senate Democrats. So hold on a second as I look up Senate Democrats. I might not be able to find it. I'm so sorry. Oh no, I'm not able to find that. Anyway, they put out a tweet. I apologize for that. They put out a tweet, and I'm not able to find that right this second. It's very possible that they took it down. That's a very possible thing too, which happens because people complain, and let's see, I'll try one more time. Sorry about that, guys. CT Dems. No, it's not going to show me. Yeah, I'm not getting it all. Let's see. Of course, while I'm live in real time. But yeah, that's basically the gist of it. I'm going to close out this live because you guys got the basic gist of it. So it's tomorrow, the court is going to reconvene at 2 p.m. And I'm going to come in and I'll let you guys know what happens through the day. I'm able to keep an eye on all the stuff that's happening through the proceedings. They are, you know, something could be decided tomorrow. So this is a really, really big deal. And you can help out the Connecticut Freedom Alliance legal fees for this case. Visit them and donate to them for the legal proceedings that's happening. And stay tuned. Keep your eyes peeled on, check out those links that I posted in the comments for the Addendum 11 and the guidelines. Adapt, achieve. I was like adapt, achieve, or something else. I forget now. There was a AAA document. Adapt, achieve, advance. Adapt, achieve, advance. You guys got to read that. If you have children in the public schools, you need to read that. You need to read Addendum 11. Read every addendum. Start reading this stuff, because like when you start to read it, it's just absolutely mind-blowing that the types of things that are coming out of here, like the first sentence on here about maskings, wherein when individual compliance with face coverings has been good, infection rates have tended to be low, and outbreaks have been less frequent and small enough to be controllable. In contrast, when compliance with face coverings is poor, outbreaks can be spread widely and community infection rates can increase very quickly. I want to know where their science is for all that. Where are they pulling this from? Where? Out of what? Where? Out of the air somewhere? I don't know about you guys, but just like living your regular life, I've been to a few family gatherings, and I tell you, nobody's wearing masks. I mean, come on, this is crazy. And I know I'm not the only one. And I've been out of state, not in one of the states that's on the list, just in case some troll is going to try and report me to the government, because that actually happens in this crazy time period we're living in. I can't believe any neighbor would actually ever have the ridiculous idea that trying to snitch on their neighbor for not following the government's ridiculous protocols. I don't even want to know you if you would ever think of doing that to somebody. Yuck. This is just crazy. Just a little bit more, and then I will totally wrap it up, because I can't believe you can read this yourself. Just look at this. And then so they admit that they don't know what they're doing. But so as we learn more about COVID, we're learning that there are large numbers of individuals. This is the part that I want to leave you with. As we're learning more about COVID-19, we're learning that there are large numbers of individuals, perhaps over 40% of all infections circulating throughout our communities, that are infected with the virus that causes, listen to this, the virus that causes this disease, but show no outward signs or symptoms of infection. That means that for every 10 people who are infected with the virus, or symptoms, or infected with the virus, are capable of spreading the infection to other people, only 6 are recognizable as having any of the common symptoms associated with COVID-19, like fever, cough, chills, trouble breathing, and another 4 go unnoticed because they are exhibiting none of those common symptoms. So that's written in the Addendum 11. And what's really interesting is they're kind of pulling this. I really want to see all this science come in through this case. This is what's exciting. This is why we need 3 branches of government. If we can have a judge that's not corrupted, and this judge allows this evidence to come in, allows these experts to testify, and allows all this stuff to come on out into a court of law, this is epic. It's huge. It's historical. It's amazing, because this is just stuff that Lamont and his team is putting together. There's no legislative body involved. All the experts are government experts. It's not like you're getting an objective crew of health professionals from various different backgrounds coming together and coming up with guidelines and policy that people could follow, and it should always be by choice. None of these mandates ever should be coerced upon the public. Now, maybe they're not going to hold you down and force you to wear a mask, but try shopping maskless these days. I know for me, it's getting harder and harder. I can't wear that mask. I'm not going to wear that mask. And there's stores that I've said, I'm never going to shop in your shop ever again, even after this is done, because I can't be treated that way. That's just ridiculous. So these coercive means, and then where this is all, it's not coming out of the legislative body. And that was one of the things that the Connecticut Freedom Alliance attorneys brought up. They were on point. It's not coming out of the legislative bodies. Governor Lamont skipped the process. The process is important, okay? The process is that we have hearings. We have experts. We have testimony from the public. We get experts not just from the governor and his handpicked team, let me just remind you guys, Governor Lamont's wife, Annie Huntress Lamont, is the founder, she's one of the founding members of Oak Healthcare FinTech, okay? She's made a fortune in the healthcare industry. She is hand-picking the experts and putting this panel together. So they put these documents together. Josh Gabal, look him up. Start reading about Josh Gabal, Thermo Fisher, Semaphore, Annie Lamont, Oak Healthcare FinTech, and you tell me if you think that this is objective, if you think that this is good science, because people talk about how they believe science. Oh, but I believe science. No, you know, what do you believe? Do you believe science? Like, are you really open to science? Because science isn't a belief. It's a process of discovery. Scientism is a belief. That's kind of like a religion. Like this. This is operating on a religion, on speculation and theories and ideas, not based in science, not based in randomized controlled trials, not based in double-blind controlled placebos and long-term studies. And it's based in analysis of these projected models and these projected ideas that are all manipulated, like the Ferguson guy, who was responsible for the numbers that led to this lockdown. The Ferguson guy from the Royal College, who was funded by Bill Gates, all that was baloney. His model was baloney. It was totally debunked. It's not based in reality. And then not only that, he went and he was having an affair with a married woman when he was under quarantine for having COVID. And this guy's science, in quotations, is what shut the world down. I'm not making this up. You could go look it up for yourself. Ferguson, I forget his first name. His last name is Ferguson. I want to say Ryan Ferguson. I could be wrong on his first name. His last name is definitely Ferguson. And you can look him up. And he was with the Imperial Royal College. And you can look up all that. Like just one more little bit here, because I just can't help myself. Okay, so here's more. This is coming out of Governor Lamont's team. The presence of this potentially large number, listen to the language. The presence of this potentially large number of infected people circulating within the community is the reason why mask wearing for source control by everyone is so important, regardless of how a person may physically feel or their willingness to accept risks to their own health. This is in Addendum 11, okay? So unlike traditional reasons for wearing a mask, which might include things like protecting the wearer from inhaling air contaminants such as dust, pollen, or chemicals, wearing a mask as a means of source control, is meant to protect everyone. The wearer comes in contact with the respiratory droplets generated by that wearer, including in the case where the wearer is one of the 4 in 10 people capable of actively spreading COVID-19 but have no signs or symptoms of the disease. I want to know where did you get the science to back that up? I want to see, were the randomized controlled trials of this? How did you come to these numbers? Where did you get this conclusion? Because if we really want to be real, I'm going to end with this little video. Hopefully, if I still have it in here. I think that I still do have this little video in here. This is, bear with me here. I may have taken out that little video, which would be a bummer. But I had a video. That's Josh Gabal. Anyway, I guess, oh no, here it is. So here's this video. I'm gonna play this for you.
What is the percentage of people we're actually going to be testing for coronavirus that are showing symptoms? Are we sort of rationing out who we can test? Because I know you said it could be the flu, it could be cold. It could be
this is true for all laboratory tests that are done. They should only be done on people who are sick, because that's what was mentioned earlier. Testing somebody who's not sick is much more likely to give you a false positive than anything else. So in medicine, as a rule, we don't test people who are not sick. This is not a test for, are you a carrier of this virus? The reason to do this test is actually to establish a diagnosis in people who are sick. So we know who has coronavirus infection and who has some other cause for their illness.
That was the state epidemiologist, okay? That was the state epidemiologist, Matthew Carter. That was back in March. And the slide was the slide I was looking for earlier that I wanted to show you guys, where the CDC came out and said that you don't need to test asymptomatic people. And then they flip-flop back. I mean, it's like a game of ping pong. I mean, you literally could sit there and watch them flip it back and then say, it's all, yeah, this is how science is. It's like, okay. So that was Matthew Carter, the state epidemiologist. And then I just kind of, this is spontaneously happening as I'm going through it, that these older things are coming back that I just also want to put into your mind here. This is Josh Cabal, who is the VP of Thermo Fisher Scientific and Core Informatics. And it was his company that had this happen. His company, Thermo Fisher Scientific TAP-PATH COVID-19 Combo Kit. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is alerting clinical laboratory staff and healthcare providers of the risk of false results with Thermo Fisher Scientific. So you know what I want to know? This is what I want to know. As this governor operates outside of the legislative body, puts all these edicts out on all of our children, cherry picks whatever anecdotal science he'd like to use, has his wife's business partners designing and implementing, well, they're maybe not implementing the tests, but they're designing these tests that the state is implementing, and all the while operating outside of the Freedom of Information Act, all the while operating outside of the legislative body, all the while operating in this small kind of closed group of industry insiders in the pharmaceutical industry, the medical industry, and he's doing all of this. Meanwhile, we're seeing things from the FDA that Thermo Scientific tests are giving false positives. We get this funky science. It says, 40% of people are carrying COVID and don't know it. 40% of the population, based on what? And somebody put in a good question about what specific strain of COVID-19. What strain? Yeah. Because, and I'll leave you on this, the strain of COVID-19 has never actually been isolated. They haven't gotten there's a testing that they do, PCR testing, and it's like Koch's postulates. And it's the basic scientific consensus of how to test for this novel virus. So the really important thing, the takeaway here is the FDA has not approved any tests. The way that the tests are operating right now is based on a emergency authorization. It's called Emergency Usage Authorization in EUA. So that's how those tests are being operated. And masks are in the same process. There's no science to back this up. There's actually science that says it doesn't work. Lots of it. We've been studying masks for years because of the flu. This is not something that's new that just happened. This has been happening for a while. We've been looking at masks for forever, since like the 1918 flu pandemic. We've been looking at masks and studying masks forever. So why they're making our children wear masks all day long in school for hours and hours at a time, and how even in the state guidelines, it's like going to teach the children how not to touch their mask. Anybody who ever worked with children, little kids especially, I feel really bad. What does that do to them psychologically? Could you imagine a little kid, they just got a little scratch on their cheek, or, they touch their face, like we all do all the time. We're human beings. We can't be robots. So how are we going to allow this to happen to our kids? I'm so glad that the Connecticut Freedom Alliance is pursuing this legal case, and it is my hope that they win. I hope they do. Court reconvenes tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll come back in live later on. Actually, I'm going to be up in Manchester following the governor around. So the governor is going to be in Manchester tomorrow. If you're, he's going to be at a brewery in Manchester. I'll post about that later. If you guys aren't following me, you can follow me at jcherry at WESU on Twitter. jcherry, Jay Cherry on Facebook if you're seeing this through a group. I'm public. Click follow. And also on YouTube, you can find me at Cherry Presents, where this is also streaming live as well. And I'll come back in tomorrow with a report on that. And I will post about the governor is going to be in Manchester at a brewery. Sorry, I don't have that information like right there, but it's going to be at 5 o'clock and he's going to be in Manchester at a brewery. You know, the other thing, it's just like a hypocrisy, but like bars are closed, but breweries are open. So, and I don't know. It's all crazy, guys. So, until we meet again in the COVID 1984 world, I'm Jay Cherry signing out.